All right, all right. So, we are starting a new sermon series today, and we're calling it, I Love My Church. I love my church. Do you love your church? I want you to love your church. You know, a few weeks back, and I think even a week ago, we asked on Facebook to kind of get some responses from you guys. And so I want to share with you what I thought I saw. In fact, if you go to our Facebook page, you could go and see what some of these responses were. But in general, I just want to share some of my observations on what you had to say about why you loved our church. And the first thing that stood out to me was, because I think a majority, overwhelming of the people that shared, talked about how this was a welcoming place. Especially like some of the people that were visiting or new, they talked about how it was such a loving and warm place. And some of our, some of those that were like born into this church, they're like, this place feels like home to me, right? This is the place that I got married in, and this is the place I choose to be a member, right? And so for me, that was significant because you guys were telling me you love your church because it's a place where we can belong. And in a time when we are so divided, right? In a time when we are so divided, a place that we can belong, a place that we can call home, I think is a very important thing. And so that's what it spoke to me. That's one of the things that you shared. Another thing that you shared was, like, we weren't asking for it, but you guys say, oh, the staff, like Danny and Libby and all of this kind of stuff. And then you mentioned like the music, and some of you talked about the message and things like that. And I think that's great. And I think part of what that spoke to me was worship. Part of the reason why you love our church is that we are a faith community who come together for the purpose of worship. That we draw strength from one another, encouragement from one another when we unite to pray and offer our words to God, when we sing our praises to God, when we open up to receive God's word into our lives, that this is what is meaningful to you. So that's the second thing that I saw, that many of you shared about how the staff, but also the different ways that we worship was what stood out to you. And the last thing I'll point out was outreach. Specifically the open table, but there's actually a lot of other ways that we actually reach out to serve and to help. And so I think this is another thing that is vital in the life of the church and why we love our church. Because it's not just about us and doing church, playing nice and playing church, but it's about us getting on with the business of God, which is how can we share the love of God in word, but also in deed. And I think that's what outreach means. And so if you guys have more, feel free to share more. And if I hear more, maybe I can share more with you. But take a look on the Facebook to see what people have shared and maybe what you feel like is important to you when it comes to our church. I want to give you a sneak peek into what this series is going to entail. Today, we're going to focus on thriving in your life, meaning to come alive. Don't just come to church, come alive. Next Sunday, we're going to focus on connecting, making connections, building relationships, building a community of faith here. The third Sunday, this is our free lunch Sunday, right? On our third Sunday of this message, we're gonna have a guest speaker, and this guest speaker is gonna talk to us about stewardship, specifically generosity, what it means to be generous of spirit, and that giving is a spiritual matter that requires a practice. Just like reading the Bible, just like praying, giving is a part of our spiritual lives. Giving is a part of our discipleship. And this is how we can carry out the work of Jesus Christ in the world. And finally, the last Sunday, we're going to unleash compassion. Unleash compassion. All that thriving, all that connecting and being generous has to go somewhere, right? And it's going to lead you to unleashing compassion on our church, on our community, and beyond. And folks, this is how we change the world. So there you have it. I love my church. I want you to love our church. And I believe all of the stuff that I just talked about is all wrapped up with church. So today we're going to focus on thriving. Are you guys thriving in your life? Are you? Let's find out. We're going to go to John chapter 10. We're going to read verses 1 through 10. Gospel of John, chapter 10, beginning on verse 1. Very truly, I tell you, anyone who does not enter the sheepfold by the gate, but climbs in by another way, is a thief and a bandit. The one who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep hear his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes ahead of them. The sheep follow him. They know his voice. Because they know his voice. They will not follow a stranger, but they will run from him, because they do not know the voice of strangers. Jesus used this figure of speech with them, but they did not understand what he was saying to them. So again, Jesus said to them, very truly I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and bandits, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters by me will be saved and will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. This is the word of God for us, the people of God. Thanks be to God. Jesus said that he came so that you may have life and have it abundantly. I'm going to translate to thrive, for you to be thriving in your life. I shared this story, my story, with you before, but I want to share it with you again because I believe it's vital to understanding why I try to strive to thrive in my life. And so here's the story. I was about to turn 40, and I was coming into a crisis point in my life. Over the years, I've learned, especially with men, that this is normal and expected, right? Some call it a midlife crisis, others a spiritual breakdown, or maybe it's just a pathway to a spiritual breakthrough. I don't know. I think for me, the best book that I've read on this midlife crisis or the spiritual crisis, without calling it that, was by Father Richard Rohr, titled Falling Upward. For me, that was a very important book that helped me to kind of understand and navigate my crisis, right? So I was about to turn 40. And 40 is the age when our society tells us that you are over the hill, right? Over the hill. Meaning, if you view your life as a hill, right? It means that you are now on the other side, the downside of your life. Thanks for playing. Your life is half over. Congratulations. At the time, in my work as a pastor, I felt okay. I felt good, actually. I thought I was doing some good and important work. I was making a difference, and I was trying to impact people's lives for good. In fact, I was especially proud of this, which was I was a part of leading a merger between two churches, between a white church and a black church. This was only the second time that this had happened in our conference. Merging a black church and a white church. And I was so proud. I was so proud of that work, of the people that I got to journey with to do this, to come together, to be one church. Right? This was a good thing. It was a God thing. I call that church Panda Church. Black, white, and Asian. So we were the Panda Church. So even though I felt like I was doing some good things in my work, internally, in my personal life, I wasn't doing so good. I wasn't happy. I didn't feel fulfilled. I felt miserable, actually. When it came to my personal life, it was like I was just going through the motions to just get through the day. Didn't feel alive. It felt more like I was dead inside. So when I was approaching 40, thinking that my life was half over, I looked at my life honestly, and here's what I realized. Here's what I observed in my life. Here I am, about to hit 40, and I still wasn't married, even though I wanted to be. And I didn't have any prospects. I had no children of my own, no family, even though that was something that I really did desire for myself in my life. And so looking at just those areas in my personal life, I just thought, you know what? This is not how I drew it up. I'm not happy right now, right? I am not fulfilled. I felt miserable. And it was during that time that I came across this morning's scripture passage, John chapter 10. Specifically, verse 10 really spoke to me. Jesus said that he came so that you may have life and have it abundantly. Jesus came that you may have life and have it abundantly. Do you believe that? Do I believe that? Did I believe that God wants me to have a full and abundant life? Did I believe that? No. To be honest, no, I did not believe that. I didn't believe that because there's this recording in my head that played over and over throughout the years that said, no, God really doesn't want you to have an abundant life or to have fun in your life. Really, he doesn't want you to have a great life, maybe a good life. And being a Christian is really more about doing things you don't want to do and sacrificing and suffering in silence. And hopefully maybe after you die, you can get to some of that good life stuff. I mean, we all have all kinds of recordings in our heads, don't we? That play in our heads over and over. But if we really asked ourselves if those messages are true, the assumptions behind those things, and does God really look at it that way? Is that what God's word even tells us? And sadly, I think the church reinforces this kind of message, right? See if this sounds familiar or if this resonates at all. You're a Christian, you can't do that. You can't drink that or smoke that. God wouldn't approve of you going there. And what, are you gonna dance too? You're a Christian, you're not supposed to like that kind of music, or those kinds of clothes. What would God think? And Jesus is watching. But when I came across this passage, as I was about to turn 40, I had to look at it again. And I had to think, and I had to ask myself, what if? What if Jesus was serious about this, and I took him at his word? I took him at face value. What if Jesus really did mean for me to have a full and abundant life? And not just exist and go through the motions, but to thrive and to really live a full and abundant life. I decided that I was going to believe Jesus at his word. That he really wanted me to have a good and a full life. And yes, to be happy. That he wouldn't be content with me just having a good work life, but that actually he wanted me and my person to be fulfilled, to have an abundant life. And I was going to hold God to those words and start living into that abundant life, or die trying. And I was gonna make sure that I stopped listening to that other recording in my head, and I was gonna say that no, that was a lie. I'm gonna make this the truth, and I'm gonna live into this, because that is not Jesus. That's not what he's about. That's not why he came. Jesus is telling me he's for me, he's on my side, and he wants me to have a full and abundant life, the best life. And who's going to know best, right? Who's going to know best what your best life really is than the one who created that life? Who will know better than the one who created you what is best for you, right? In the beginning, we're told, the Bible tells us that God created the heavens and the earth, and on the sixth day, God created man and woman in God's image, meaning God designed you. He came up with the software. He knows you intimately, who you are and what's going to make for your best life. Simone Weil was a Jewish Christian who lived during the World War II era. She was a mystic or a contemplative, a theologian, and an activist. And she talked about it this way. She said, we all walk around with a God-shaped hole in our lives. A God-shaped hole in our lives, and we keep trying to fill it with the things of this world. But they will never satisfy us. Those things will never satisfy us, because only God can do that. Only God can fill that hole in your life. St. Augustine spoke to this when he said, our heart is restless, meaning it's anxious and empty and unfulfilled until it rests in you. The psalmist put it this way. He said, you are my Lord, and apart from you, I have no good thing. Psalm 16. Most of you know how my story ended up, right? How my story went. I have a beautiful wife who I love more than anything in the world. I have 3 healthy, beautiful boys who are a mess, and they're a handful. And I love them still, and surprisingly, they love me too. And I love my church. I just feel an excitement at this church that there's some great things happening, and I'm so thrilled that I get to have front row seating to all that God is doing in the life of this church and in this community. So, I feel like I am blessed. I mean, these are undeniably good things. But those things alone, by themselves, do not make for an abundant life. I know plenty of people who are married with kids and have great jobs, but aren't happy and fulfilled. It's because these things have to be sustained. We are to be stewards of these things that God has placed in our lives. They needed to be tended to, cared for, and loved on. Even then, it could still break your heart. So, where does the strength come from then? Right? Where does the power come from? Where does the love? It comes from God. God who is our source, God who sustains us and cares for us and loves us and walks with us through the good things and the bad things. And the very best way we can be sustained by God as believers? The very best way is worship. Worship. Regularly gathering together in a room full of believers each week. Yes, each week, if we can. Not because God gets something great out of it, but it's because we need it. We need to get something out of it. It's good for our souls to be together with other believers, to be able to pray and offer our concerns and words and hopes and dreams. It's good for us to praise and to give thanks for all the ways that God has and continues to bless us. It's vital for us to receive God's life-giving word into our lives, to speak something afresh in our spirits so that we can be living in God's fullness. Jesus was telling us this too. He was saying that his sheep, they listen for his voice. They listen to his voice and they follow him. We need to tune our ears, our hearts to God. And the very best way that we do that as Christians is worship. When we gather in the name of Christ so that we can pray, give thanks, and to hear God's word speak into our lives. And actually, 1 hour a week is not enough. So daily we ought to make time to give of ourselves to God in prayer, in reading and searching the scriptures. And again, yes, I believe God is honored. Yes, I believe God is blessed. But really, I think it's for you. Prayer is another way to look at it. It's another word for lifeline. This is a lifeline for you. And when we look at the Bible, it is our daily bread. Because this is what feeds us, encourages us, inspires us, and sustains us. This is how we grow in a loving way so that we can be more like the one that we're following. And it will give us the power to thrive in our lives. I want us to thrive. I want you to thrive. It means you're going to need to tend to your soul, your connection to God. We do that here on Sundays, weekly, to worship. I want to encourage you to do that daily at home, in prayer and in your scripture. Hey, I know it's hard, but what good thing isn't hard? So it's not easy, it's not convenient, but I'll tell you, it is worth it. It is worth it. Because you and your life is worth it. Your spouse, your children, your friendships are worth it. And you owe it to yourself to thrive in your life. So how can worship, tuning our hearts to God, be a priority? How can we make daily a priority to reach out to God and to come into his presence? If you have more questions about this, come find me, find somebody who does it well, and talk to them. Because I don't want you to just come to church. I want you to come alive. I want you to thrive. And I want you to think about also, not just yourself, but maybe somebody on your mind, on your heart, that God has placed, who also needs that for them. Who are the ones that God is putting on your heart? Who is struggling or maybe have kind of lost their way and needs church right now? I want us to be intentional about this fall. To think intentionally about the people that we feel like God has placed in our hearts, that we need to pray about, we need to reach out to. Maybe just write them a note, something. I want you right now to go with me in prayer as we think about what God has been sharing with us today and what this means for us. Would you join me in prayer? Loving and life-giving God, help us to be open and honest with you now. It's not like you don't know already. So help us to look honestly at our life. How are we doing? How is it with your soul today? Are you alive or just going through the motions? Do you really believe that God wants you to have a full and abundant life? Do you trust that? Do you trust that God knows what will make for your best life? Will you trust God and place your life in Him? Will you make a commitment and a priority to worship God? Will you seek to be in God's presence daily? Will you ask God to fill that hole in your life? But this isn't just for me. God, revealed to me those you have placed in my care, those who need you, and the love and support of a good church. Help me also to pray for these persons, and that because we prayed, move us with compassion to reach out to them. Lord, hear our prayer. Help us so that we may thrive in our life. We pray in the name of Jesus Christ, who came that we may have life and have it abundantly. Amen.